The planet Laura was a quiet world in the far edges of the galaxy. Its people, called Lorans, lived in bright valleys surrounded by tall green hills. The sky was usually a soft blue during the day and full of silver stars at night. The Lorans loved music, farming, and telling old stories under the moonlight. They had no weapons, no armies, and no need for them. Their world had been peaceful for generations. One morning, something strange appeared in the sky. At first it was just a thin dark line, high above the clouds. Most people thought it was a shadow from a passing comet or perhaps a cluster of trade ships heading to another star. But the shadow grew wider each day. It began to stretch across the sun, dimming its warm light. Farmers noticed their crops growing slower. Children felt colder in the mornings. Birds began to change their flying paths. The elders of Laura grew worried. This was not something they had seen before. Soon, strange shapes became visible in the sky. They were not like any ships the Lorans knew. These shapes were huge, made of metal, and moved with slow, steady precision. They did not send any greetings or signals. They simply floated there, blocking more and more of the sunlight. The Loran Council gathered in their meeting hall. Leaders from every valley came. There was quiet in the room as they looked at a glowing map of their world. The map showed that more than 30% of sunlight was already being blocked. Old Counselor Wren spoke first. If this continues, our crops will fail before the next harvest. We must call for help. Many heads nodded. The Lorans did not have advanced ships or powerful technology. They were members of the Galactic Union, an alliance of many worlds. The Union had promised to help its members in times of trouble. Surely they would respond. The Council sent an urgent message through their single long-range transmitter. The message was simple: Laura requests aid. Unknown machines are blocking our sun. Food supply at risk. Please respond. The message traveled through the cold emptiness of space, jumping from relay station to relay station. On Laura, the people waited. Days passed. The shadow in the sky grew darker. The Lorans began rationing food. They tried using bright lamps for their crops, but the energy cost was high and the results were poor. Finally, a reply came. It was from the Galactic Union headquarters. The message was brief. Your call for aid has been received. Union forces are stretched thin. We are sending your request to nearby allied worlds. The Lorans felt a wave of relief. Someone would come. The Union was vast, and many worlds had strong fleets and brilliant scientists. Their rescuers would surely arrive soon, but far away, on a planet most Lorans only knew from old tales. The message reached an unexpected listener on Earth, in a research station built on the coast of a stormy ocean. A group of humans studied deep space signals. Earth was part of the Union, but many other members viewed humans with caution. Earth was called a death world because it was filled with dangerous wildlife, unpredictable weather, and harsh environments. Humans were known to be stubborn, quick-thinking, and resourceful, but their ways often confused others. When the Loran message reached the station, Technician Samara read it twice. Then she called her commander. They are asking for help. She said, the Union is not assigned a rescue team yet. We are the closest. Commander Mira stepped into the room. She studied the message with a focused look. Blocking the sun. That is not a common threat, and the Union is too busy to act quickly. If we wait for them, Laura may not last. Samara hesitated. If we go, the Lorans will expect a Union-style rescue. We are not exactly the same. Mira gave a faint smile. Then we will give them a human-style rescue. Within hours, a small fleet of human ships was prepared. They were not as polished as the Union cruisers. Their surfaces carried repair marks and added panels from old missions. But they were fast, and their crews were used to challenges. The fleet left Earth, engines burning bright as they crossed the dark space toward Laura. The journey would take days. During the travel, Mira and her team studied every detail of the Loran message. They compared it to known reports of alien machines in other sectors. Nothing matched exactly. On Laura, the people continued to watch the shadow grow. Some believed it was the work of unfriendly civilizations. Others thought it might be a strange natural event. A few feared it was a sign from the old legends. A test from the universe itself. Children asked their parents when the rescuers would come. The parents always said, soon. But in their hearts, they were not sure. Then, one crisp morning, as the shadow covered nearly half the sky, the watchers on Laura saw movement among the stars. At first, they thought it was another part of the strange machines, but the shapes moved differently. They approached quickly, engines glowing. The first human ship entered orbit. It was larger than most Loran buildings, but carried an unpolished, sturdy look. More ships followed, each with different shapes and markings. The Lorans gathered in their towns, staring upward. Many were surprised. These were not the sleek, Silver Union vessels they had imagined. These ships seemed more like travelers that had survived many journeys. When the lead ship sent a transmission, the Loran Council accepted it at once. On the main screen, they saw a human woman with short dark hair and a steady gaze. "I am Commander Mira of Earth," she said. "We received your call for help. We are here to solve this problem." Counselor Wren stepped forward. "We are grateful, Commander. The shadow grows stronger every day." "Can you stop it?" Mira nodded once. "We will do more than stop it. We will annihilate the problem completely." The council members exchanged uneasy looks at the word annihilate. For a people who had lived without war for centuries, it was a heavy word. But they said nothing. They needed help, and the humans had arrived when no one else had. Outside, in the sky above Laura, the human ships began to move, their engines flashing in the dim light. On the surface, the Lorans waited, wondering what kind of help these so-called Deathworlders would bring. They did not yet know that the meaning of annihilate in human hands could be very different from what they feared. The first human ship in orbit above Laura moved slowly, almost like it was studying every detail of the strange machines that blocked the sun. From the ground, it looked like a large dark shape drifting across the stars, but to the humans aboard, it was a busy workspace filled with screens, maps, and calculations. Commander Mira stood at the center of the main deck. Round her, crew members moved with quiet focus. Every few seconds, new readings appeared on their monitors. The alien machines were big, far bigger than any human vessel, but they moved with an almost lazy slowness, as if confident no one could stop them. On the surface of Laura, the people gathered in their open squares to watch the sky. The sight of these newcomers filled them with a mix of hope and doubt. The human ships looked nothing like the shiny, flawless Union cruisers that sometimes visited Laura in the past. Instead, they carried panels of different colors, odd shapes attached to their sides, and long marks from past journeys. They looked like they had been through many challenges and somehow survived every one of them. Some Lorans whispered that perhaps humans were just traders who had arrived by chance. Others feared they might be adventurers with no real plan. But Counselor Wren reminded them that anyone who came from Earth carried the reputation of being able to adapt to anything. That evening, the Loran Council met with Commander Mira through a large holographic projection in the main hall. The image of the human leader appeared in the center of the round table. Her uniform was simple, her voice calm but confident. "We are here because you asked for help," Mira began. "We understand your sun is being blocked by large machines of unknown origin. We also understand your resources are limited." Counselor Wren nodded. "Yes, our farms are failing. Our people grow weaker. We hope the Union would send specialists to remove the machines." Mira tilted her head slightly. "We are specialists, but we do things differently. If we help, the problem will not return. When we say we will annihilate it, we mean we will remove it so completely that it can never trouble you again." The council members exchanged looks. The word annihilate still sounded heavy, but Mira's calm tone made it seem less threatening. "What will you do?" asked Counselor Lin, a younger member of the group. Mira smiled faintly. "First, we learn. Then we plan. Then we act." After the meeting, the humans began their work. Small human scout ships flew close to the alien machines, scanning their surfaces. They did not touch them, only observed. They took note of every movement. Every small change in temperature, every pattern in their slow turning. The Lorens were curious. They had expected the humans to attack the machines directly or send demands to whoever controlled them. But instead, the humans acted like patient gardeners studying a strange plant before deciding how to handle it. On the second day after arrival, the humans set up several large floating platforms high in the upper atmosphere. These platforms carried powerful lights that shone down on Laura's fields. It was not the same as sunlight, but it was enough to keep the crops alive a little longer. This is only the beginning. Mira explained to the council during their daily briefing. We are buying time while we study the threat. The Lorens were surprised by this approach. Union teams usually focused on removing the danger first and helping the planet afterward. The humans seemed to be doing both at the same time. Down in the valleys, children pointed to the new bright spots in the sky. Farmers worked late into the evening, planting and tending crops under the artificial glow. For the first time in weeks, the people felt a small spark of hope. But hope alone would not stop the machines. The humans continued their quiet, careful observations from their data. They learned that the alien machines were not fully aware of the human presence. The machines adjusted slightly when ships passed near them, but did not change their overall pattern. This tells us something important. Mira said during a strategy meeting aboard her flagship. They are not controlled directly, they are running on programmed instructions. That means they can be tricked. The crew members around her nodded. Trickery was something humans were especially good at. Meanwhile, the Lorens tried to understand these so-called Deathworlders. Human engineers visited the surface to examine Loran energy systems. They worked with local builders to reinforce food, storage areas, and taught new methods of keeping seeds fresh. The Lorens noticed that humans often laughed even while working. They seemed to enjoy solving problems, no matter how serious. At first, the Lorens thought this was strange, but slowly, they began to see that it made the work feel lighter and less hopeless. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the valleys, a small human shuttle landed near the main Loran town. A group of humans stepped out carrying crates filled with unfamiliar equipment. Curious children gathered at a safe distance. An engineer named Tomas opened one crate and revealed a round device with folding panels. This, he explained to the farmers nearby, is a portable light farm. It can run for months on stored energy. It will not replace the sun, but it will help your crops grow faster. The farmers were amazed. They had never seen such a device. Tomas showed them how to set it up, how to aim the panels, and how to check its energy levels. The farmers worked late into the night to place the devices in their fields. Back on the flagship, Mira studied the latest scans of the alien machines. Patterns were becoming clear. The machines rotated in cycles, adjusting slightly to maintain their position if something distracted them, even for a short time. Gaps could appear in their coverage of the sun. We need them to move where we want, Mira told her officers. And once they start moving, we will make sure they do not stop. The humans began building strange structures in space, far from Laura, but within sight of the alien machines. The Lorens could see these new shapes glimmer faintly in the night sky. When asked about them, Mira only said, "It is part of the plan." The Lorens did not fully understand, but they were beginning to trust. The humans had already given them more light for their fields, new tools for farming, and stronger storage for food. They had done all this without asking for payment or favors. Still, a question remained in the minds of many Lorens. If the humans were this resourceful, what would they do when it was time to annihilate the problem? For now, the people waited and watched as the humans worked, their ships moving like patient hunters circling a much larger prey, high above the quiet valleys. The Deathworlders were preparing something that no one on Laura, or in the Galactic Union, had ever seen before. From the first day the human ships arrived, Commander Mira had told her crew that observation was as important as action. The alien machines above Laura might have been large and slow, but their presence showed that whoever had placed them there was confident. That confidence, Mira believed, could be turned into a weakness. For nearly a week, small human scout ships moved around the shadow in the sky. They stayed at a safe distance, but used powerful sensors to study every surface of the alien machines. They recorded the way the machines reflected sunlight, the way they tilted in response to small changes in space, and even the faint hum of energy that pulsed through their frames. In the control room of the flagship, the crew began building a model of the enemy in their computers. Every new piece of data was added to this model. By the fourth day, they could predict exactly when each machine would shift its position and by how much. "This is what we needed," Mira said during a briefing. "Now we know the rhythm of their movement. That means we can play with it." On the surface of Laura, the Lorans were both curious and confused. They had expected the humans to attack quickly or remove the machines by force, but instead, the humans seemed to be studying them like puzzle pieces. Counselor Lin visited the human landing site to ask about their progress. She found Engineer Tomas and his team working on strange, shiny panels. "What are these for?" she asked. Tomas smiled. "Mirrors, large mirrors. We are going to place them in orbit." Lin tilted her head. "To reflect light?" "Yes," Tomas said, "but not only for your crops. Light can be used for many things. You will see." The Lorans helped carry equipment and loaded onto small shuttles. The humans welcomed the help and explained their tools in simple terms. The Lorans learned how to connect the mirror panels, how to check the frame bolts, and how to fold them for transport. That night, when the shuttles carried the mirrors into space, the Lorans looked up to see faint glimmers passing over the sky. Meanwhile, aboard the flagship, Mira studied the model of the alien machines. She noticed something unusual. The machines did not seem to sense objects that reflected a lot of light. It was as if their sensors ignored bright flashes, perhaps to avoid reacting to stars or sunlight. "This is it," Mira told her crew. "If we can give them something brighter than the sun, they will look away. While they are distracted, we make our real move." The next morning, the first mirrors were deployed in space. They unfolded slowly, each one as wide as a city block. They caught the sunlight from the far side of Laura and bounced it directly into the machine's sensors. From the ground, the Lorans noticed strange flashes in the sky. Some thought it was lightning, but the weather was clear. Others guessed it was part of the human plan. The machines reacted exactly as Mira had hoped. They began shifting their positions slightly, turning away from the planet and toward the bright reflected light. This created small gaps where sunlight passed through to the surface. Farmers noticed their fields were brighter during these gaps. Children ran outside to play in the warm light. Even though the gaps lasted only a few minutes at a time, it was enough to lift the spirits of the people. But the mirrors were only the beginning. The humans had a second plan, and it was far more subtle. While the machines were distracted by the flashes, the humans released hundreds of small probes disguised as harmless debris. These probes were the size of a backpack and carried no weapons. Instead, they were filled with sensors, signal boosters, and tiny transmitters. The probes drifted slowly toward the machines, riding gentle pushes from the planet's gravity and the pull of solar winds to the machines. They looked like random space junk. When the first probe attached itself to a machine's surface, it began recording everything: vibrations, heat patterns, and data signals. The information was sent back to the human ships, where it was added to the growing model of the enemy on the surface. Counselor Ren listened carefully as Mira explained what they were doing. "You are not trying to destroy the machines," Ren said. Mira nodded. "Not yet. First, we want to understand them completely. If we know how they think, we can make them act in ways that help us instead of harm us." The Lorans were fascinated. They had never considered that an enemy could be defeated without a single direct strike. Over the next several days, the humans gathered more and more information. They discovered that the machines communicated with each other using beams of invisible light. The timing of these signals was always precise, and the messages repeated in patterns. One evening, as the flagship floated silently above the dark side of Laura, Mira gathered her senior officers. "The key is in the communication," she explained. "If we can send our own messages into their network, we can tell them anything we want. We can make them move, We can make them turn away from the planet. We can even make them fight each other without realizing it. The crew discussed the risks. If the machines detected the interference, they might change their programming and become harder to trick. But if they succeeded, the machines would lose control of the shadow they had created on the ground. The Lorens noticed that the sunlight gaps were becoming more frequent. Farmers began to plan their planting schedules around these moments of light. Children learned to run outside as soon as the first warm beam touched the ground. For the first time since the shadow began, laughter returned to the valleys. Late one night, Mira stood on the observation deck of her ship, looking down at the peaceful lights of Laura's towns. She knew the hardest part was still to come. Distracting the machines was only step one. Soon, they would have to push them into a position where they could no longer threaten the planet at all. She turned to her second-in-command, Officer Rian. They think they are still in control. That is good. The moment they realize they are not, it will be too late for them to stop us. Far below, under the faint glow of artificial lights in the fields, the Lorens slept without fear for the first time in many nights. They did not yet know that the humans were already preparing the move that would change everything. The days after the first sunlight gaps brought a new rhythm to Laura. Farmers watched the sky as closely as they watched their crops. Whenever the light broke through the shadow, they rushed into the fields to tend their plants. The people had learned that these short moments of warmth could make the difference. Between a failed harvest and a saved one, from orbit, the human ships kept their quiet watch. Commander Mira studied the machine network every morning. Her crew's data model was now so precise that they could predict the exact minute each machine would turn, pause, and realign. One morning, Mira called her senior officers to the strategy deck. A large display in the center showed the alien machines circling in their slow dance above Laura. The mirror stations were still in place, but now their reflective flashes were perfectly timed to create more sunlight gaps. They are responding to our light tricks exactly as we hoped, Mira said. It is time to make them move even more. Today, we begin the grand diversion. The officers leaned in as she explained the plan. The mirrors would be repositioned, not just to create flashes, but to produce shifting beams that danced across the machine's sensors. At the same time, new floating platforms would be placed on the far side of the planet, each carrying a different light signature to the machines. These would look like new objects entering the system, possibly threats, possibly resources. Either way, the machines would have to investigate. This is a chase, Mira explained. We make them look where we want, and while they are chasing shadows, we move in close. The Lorens were invited to help. Human shuttles carried them into orbit for the first time in their lives. For most Lorens, seeing their planet from space was overwhelming. The green valleys, silver rivers, and soft white clouds looked so fragile compared to the dark emptiness around them. On one shuttle, Counselor Lin helped attach mirror panels to a new platform. The work was simple but required steady hands. Lin asked the human pilot how they would move the mirrors into the right position. We use the push from sunlight itself, the pilot said. The panels catch the light like sails. It is slow, but once they start moving, they do not stop. The Lorens marveled at the idea of moving massive objects with nothing but light. Back on the flagship, Mira watched as the first set of mirrors began to drift into their new paths. The reflected beams created moving points of brightness that slid across the machine's sensors. At first, there was no change. The machines continued their slow rotation as if nothing had happened. But then, one of them shifted slightly toward the light. A second followed. Within hours, the entire network began making small adjustments. They are taking the bait, Officer Rian said with a satisfied smile. On the surface, the Lorens noticed the difference almost at once. Sunlight broke through in wider patterns and stayed longer. Farmers could now work for an entire hour before the shadow returned. But Mira's plan was not finished. The light patterns were only part of the diversion. The real distraction came from the tiny probes the humans had already placed on the machines. These probes had been silent until now. With a single command from Mira, they activated and began sending carefully timed signals into the machine's communication network. The messages were harmless but confusing, instructions that made no sense when compared to the machine's normal programming. Some signals told the machines to adjust their position slightly. Others told them to focus on invisible points in space where nothing existed. A few even told them to report imaginary damage. The machines began reacting in strange ways. Some rotated faster than before. Others shifted up and down, breaking the smooth pattern they had maintained since arriving from the surface. The Lorens saw strange movements in the shadow above them, as if the sky itself was bending and twisting. In the Loran capital, Counselor Wren received a private update from Mira. "We are making them spend energy and attention on problems that do not exist," Mira explained. "The more they react to us, the more they weaken their own system. Soon, they will not have the stability to block the sun completely." Wren listened carefully. "You are not fighting them in the way we thought. You are making them fight themselves." "That is the human way," Mira said simply. "When you cannot push something directly, you make it push itself until it falls." As the days passed, the diversion grew more elaborate. The moving lights from the mirrors made the machines constantly adjust their position, while the false signals from the probes kept them in a state of confusion. The machines were still massive and powerful, but their once perfect coordination was breaking apart. The Lorens began to trust the humans more deeply. They saw that the Deathworlders did not rush into reckless action. They planned each step carefully, using creativity instead of brute force. One afternoon, a group of Loran children gathered near a human engineering site to watch the workers assemble another platform. The humans let them help carry small tools and explain how each part worked. One child asked why they were building more mirrors if the sunlight was already returning. A young human engineer knelt beside the child and said, "Because the more confused the machines become, the easier it will be to move them where we want. And when they are in the right place, we will make sure they never come back." By the end of the week, the machines above Laura were no longer a single, steady wall. They had gaps, uneven layers, and parts that drifted slightly apart. The sunlight on the planet now shone for several hours each day. The people celebrated by holding their first open-air market since the shadow began. Music filled the valley streets as farmers brought out baskets of fresh vegetables, saved from their improved harvest. High above the celebration, in the human flagship, Mira stood at the observation window. She watched the broken shadow drift slowly across the planet. "They are moving exactly where we want them," she told Officer Rian. "Soon, we make the final push." Rian nodded. "They still do not know they are being herded." Mira smiled. "And when they realize it, they will already be in the trap." The shadow above Laura no longer held the steady shape it once did. The machines that had blocked the sun now shifted awkwardly, twisting and turning as if confused. The people on the ground could feel the difference. Warmth returned in longer stretches, and the crops showed signs of new life. But Commander Mira knew the battle was far from over. On board the human flagship, the atmosphere was tense but hopeful. Data streamed in from the sensors placed on the machines. The tiny probes sent their messages continuously, weaving a web of signals that mixed truth with false commands. The alien machines, large and powerful, began to send confusing replies back to each other. "This is the moment we have prepared for," Mira told her officers during a briefing. "The machines are breaking their own rhythm. Now we push further. We make them turn against themselves." Officer Rian nodded. "Their programming depends on perfect coordination. When that is gone, they will become useless." Mira turned to the technician operating the communication array. "Begin the next phase. Send the final sequence." A moment later, the probes started transmitting a new pattern. This one was designed to trick the machines into believing that some of their parts were malfunctioning. The messages told each machine to check its neighbor closely and report any signs of damage. The machines responded as expected. They began scanning each other more often, moving closer and then farther away, breaking the careful distances they had maintained. Some shifted erratically, turning their large surfaces toward each other as if in suspicion. In the valleys below, the Lorens noticed the shadow flickering unevenly. Sometimes it thinned to a gentle veil. Other times it almost disappeared entirely. Children played longer outside, and the farmers worked their fields with renewed energy. Counselor Lin visited the human engineers who had set up the mirror platforms. She watched as the bright panels slowly changed position, reflecting light in shifting patterns. "Is it dangerous?" she asked Tomas, one of the lead engineers. "No," Tomas replied, smiling. "It is like a dance. The light guides the machines to move where we want. We do not fight them with weapons. We fight them with tricks." Lin looked up at the sky, feeling the warmth on her face. "It feels like the sun is returning." "It is," Tomas said. "And soon, it will shine freely again." Back on the flagship, the team monitored the alien machines closely. The breakdown of their coordination was becoming clear. Instead of working together as a wall, the machines moved in small groups or alone. Some even spun slowly on their own axes, creating gaps in the shadow. "Commander," Rian reported, "our pros detect several machines signaling warnings to others about damage that does not exist. They are confused and wasting energy." Mira nodded. "That is exactly what we wanted. When machines doubt each other, they cannot maintain control." Meanwhile, the Lorens prepared for the changes. The human teams taught them how to use the extra sunlight to grow faster crops and store food better. The people began to believe the darkness would end soon. One evening, Counselor Wren stood outside his home, looking at the starry sky. He thought about the humans, the Deathworlders, who had arrived quietly and changed everything. They had not come with threats or demands. Instead, they brought hope and clever plans. Wren wondered how such a small group could challenge machines that seemed so vast and powerful. Then he remembered Mira's words about trickery and patience. They think they are hunting shadows. Wren said quietly to himself, but the shadows are leading them to their own undoing. On the flagship, the final sequence continued. The machines' confusion grew. Some began to turn away from the planet entirely, their massive surfaces catching the reflected light in strange angles. Others rotated quickly, as if trying to escape invisible threats. The human engineers calculated that the machines' power supplies were draining faster than before. Without steady energy, the machines would lose the ability to stay in place. Mira, watch the screens closely. We cannot stop now. The machines are close to collapse. If we give them time, they might recover. Officer Rion agreed. We increased the signal strength and confused them even more. The human ships sent out pulses of light and sound that the machines could not understand. The machines' own communication signals scrambled and overlapped instead of a coordinated network. There was noise. On Laura, the people noticed the sudden warmth spreading across the valleys. The shadow was breaking apart like a cracked glass. Light reached even the farthest fields. Farmers smiled as their crops stretched toward the sun again. Children laughed, chasing each other in the long shadows that were now softer and thinner. Counselor Lin returned to the human team to share the good news. Your plan is working. The machines are losing control. Tomas nodded. The machines are not made for this kind of confusion. They are strong but not smart. That is why patience and cleverness win. As the days passed, the machines began to drift farther apart. Their energy systems strained to keep up. Without steady sunlight blocking, Laura's plants revived quickly. Commander Mira stood at the observation window of her ship, watching the slow change below. The once darkened world was turning green again. The hardest part is over, she told her officers. Now we prepare to finish the job. Rian smiled. They did not even realize they are defeated. The Lorens held a celebration in the town square. Music, food, and laughter filled the air. The people thanked the humans for their help. Mira joined the celebration briefly, standing among the people she had come to protect. The warmth of the sun on her face felt like a promise that even the darkest shadows could be broken with patience, courage, and clever minds. The sky above Laura was no longer dark. The shadow that had hung heavy for so long was breaking apart. The alien machines, once a solid wall blocking the sun, now drifted apart like broken leaves on the wind. The people below looked up with hope. in their eyes, feeling the warmth of sunlight on their faces once again. Commander Mira stood on the observation deck of the flagship, watching the slow retreat of the machines. The sensors showed that the machines' power was low and their movements were uncoordinated. The human crews had done what they came to do. Now it was time to finish the mission. Mira gathered her officers for the final briefing. The plan was clear: to guide the machines far from Laura and prevent their return. "We have weakened their network," she said. "Now we will lead them away from the planet for good. The mirrors and probes will guide them into space, away from the world." "They have tried to shadow." Officer Rion nodded. "They are tired and confused. They will follow the light we send." The humans adjusted the mirrors to create a bright path leading away from Laura. Shining like a beacon into the dark space, the probes sent new signals, gently guiding the machines to move along this path. On the surface, the Lorans watched the changing sky. The dark shapes above seemed to lose interest in the planet. Slowly, they drifted higher and farther away. Following the light that beckoned them, farmers smiled as the sun warmed their fields. Children played under clear blue skies. For the first time in many seasons, the people could dream again. Counselor Lynn visited the human ships to thank Commander Mira and her crew. "You saved our home," she said. "We will never forget your courage and wisdom." Mira smiled gently. "We did not do this alone. You trusted us and helped us. That made the difference." As the machines moved farther into space, their signals grew weaker and finally stopped. The last shadows faded from Laura's skies. The Lorans celebrated with music and dance. The markets were full of fresh food, and the people spoke of new hopes for the future. But Mira knew this was only the beginning. Other worlds might face similar threats. The lessons learned here would help protect many more. Before leaving orbit, Mira looked down at Laura once more. The green valleys stretched wide under the bright sun. The people were safe. "This is why we fight," she whispered. "To bring light where there was darkness." The human ships prepared to leave, carrying the memory of a world saved by patience and cleverness. A new dawn had come to Laura, and with it, a promise of peace and hope.